While they're getting set here, Shangri-La is my subject. Shangri-La comes from the Tibetan word Shangri-La, and it means paradise. I'm going to show you a photographer's paradise, Tibet, which is an area that I know well and have been working in for the last 5 years. And the result is this book. So I'm going to show you pictures from this book. It's the first time that anybody's going to see these, certainly in Malaysia, and I hope you'll be getting this book in your bookstores soon. But my connection with Sony is I took all the photographs in this book with Sony cameras. It was about the time I made the switch from Canon to the Sony Alpha 900. That was 5 years ago. And anyway, it was a happy switch. I changed first for the megapixels, the size of the files, and then I stayed because of the cutting edge technology. So that's all I'll say about Sony, is these pictures that I'm about to show you are all taken with 8900s and 877s. And then tomorrow I'm going to show you what it's like to do a Sony shoot with the A99, which I was privileged to do the advertising for last year. But anyway, let's go. Okay, so my first story for the Geographic using in Tibet was in this area, this very wide area. You can see it includes southern parts of China, as well as all the way over here as far as Bhutan and India. But this is the Tibetan Plateau, and this is where these photographs take place. The story was on the Chamagu Downs, is the tea forest road, a 1,000-year-old route where tea, Chinese tea, was traded for Tibetan horses that Chinese needed for their army. So that's the gist of the story. Let me take you through it visually. Zhujiaigou. Anybody been to Zhujiaigou? It's China's most popular national park for photographers. It is indeed a photographer's paradise, and it was here where I first heard about Chamagu Downs, the Tea Horse Road. It's in Greater Tibet. It's a series of lakes and incredibly clear water. Here what you're looking at is reflections in this most incredibly clear water. Lots of detail. When I go to a place, my first research is looking at every picture taken of a place. And I looked at a lot of Chinese photography, and I noticed they shot always the big scene, nothing detail. So I reversed my thinking and shot detail. My job is to take pictures that will inspire you, the local photographer who would be the toughest critic. I'm not interested in what my editors are going to think of these pictures. I want to impress the local photographers with this stuff. This is what you're looking at in the previous picture, a reflection looking into the water, this incredibly clear water. You're looking at the bottom of this lake. Let's see. Oh yeah. Okay, so you can see this. Now the character of this place is a bunch of lakes that were discovered only about 30 years ago, and the loggers were in this area cutting these trees down. So you see a lot of these dead trees in the water. The only trouble is if you guys go there to try and shoot this picture, you cannot do that anymore because in the last earthquake, this tree just disappeared under the water. But you can see it's moss growing on top of the tree, and the log goes down into the water like this, and it's incredibly clear water. Very jewel-like, so I shoot a lot of close-ups. Since this is a photography card, I'm going to try and take you a little bit behind the scene here. Normally when I give this show, I just talk about the story, but I'll try as much as possible to fill you in photography. Here, of course, I'm looking down at the ground. This, for me, is the game changer with this A99, is this reticulated screen here. This makes the difference, and to shoot those low angles, I'm using this to shoot this kind of picture. Waterfalls, of course. This is, as I say, this water comes down from the glacier, and it comes down in a series of most amazing waterfalls. Slow shutter. Again, my job as a geographic photographer, the way we like to think of our pictures as page stoppers. I want the reader, when they're looking at the magazine, I want them to stop page flipping. You all know it's a very thick magazine, and when you're flipping through pages, you're doing it very quickly. So I want to have a picture in there that grabs your attention and forces you to look and stop and stare at that picture, and then maybe you'll read the caption, and maybe you'll read the story. Anyway, photographer's paradise. There are plenty of photographers there. That's the hardest part of shooting in this park, is you have to work yourself around the number of photographers that are going to be there trying to make frames. Okay, so here's the tea region. Now, all tea comes from China, and it all comes from the edge of the Tibetan Plateau, high altitude. So this is one of the tea growing areas. This is Xishuangbanna, which is south Yunnan. And here we are in the second tea growing region called Ya'an. Of course, tea is great for photos. Try and put color and people into our landscapes with Geographic. I love shooting in the rain. I love shooting in bad weather when you're told to put your camera away because it's wet and conditions are not good. That's when you want to bring your camera out, because you get unusual light. Color, of course, saturates green, and I got this wonderful number of triangles here in the rain, shooting in the rain. Now that tea, when that little tea leaf, those little tea bushes, if you let them grow for 1,000 years, that's how big they get. So the most expensive tea in the world are from the tops of these trees, these tea trees, where they collect the leaves. And this is pu'er tea from Xishuangbanna. It's the world's most expensive tea. If anybody's a tea fan, you must know pu'er. It's this very dark brown tea that certainly commands the highest prices. Tea processing. So I shoot this picture. This ran in the Geographic. I don't know if anybody saw the story. This is what we ran in the magazine, double truck, 2 pages. This is what's running in my book. Often photography is a subjective decision. I like one picture, the picture editor likes another, we fight about it, and one gets published. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Of course, I love the fact that you can see that little kid's behind as he's running into the house. That's how tea's made. So they put this tea into the weigh it and steam it, and they put it into these capes. As a documentary photographer, I have to think, how can I tell these stories in one frame, 1 or 2 frames? And so this is a classic documentary. This is how we think. They think through the entire process, and they make frames that tell how everything's done. And of course, once it's in these capes, and they wrap them in this way, they've been doing this for 1,000 years. Different kind of tea. This is Tibetan brick tea. They pound it into these bricks made out of rice straw. And note this shape. This shape hasn't changed in 1,000 years. The road has been up and running. This trade has been going on for over 1,000 years. This is the way they used to bring it over mountains. Each one of those weighs like 18 kilos. So you can imagine how heavy those loads are. 400 pounds plus. I do these stories that often need illustration of something that happened a long time ago. In the case of tea, the fortunate thing is that these guys, the guys who were the porters carrying that tea, they still are alive today. So we can do interviews and actually take pictures of how they look now, as opposed to how they look then. And here's the reason why all of this trade was going on is the forest. Now the Tibetans needed the tea because they don't have vegetables at high altitude. So they don't have vegetable matter. They have serious problems without eating vegetables. So tea took the place of vegetables. It became part of their diet. They had to have it. And the Chinese wanted these amazing horses, ponies actually, for their sure-footedness to fight the Mongols to the north. Not so easy actually to see horses anymore in Tibet because they have no more use, but obviously they still see them around and we shoot the best light. Very rare scene to see this many horses. I need a high angle, however, to shoot where you can separate them from the background. So I'm standing on the top of my Land Cruiser in order to get the high angle of the low light. Shangri-La. So there is a Shangri-La. Has anybody been there? Zhongdian in Yunnan. Anybody been? Get there because this place is changing fast and is everywhere in China. Once it becomes a popular tourist area, it deteriorates quickly. But while the roads are not all completely built, this still is a paradise. Lots of tourism, but you can still see scenes like this. You just got to get up early for it. And this is the area that was described in a book called Lost Horizon by an author who coined the word Shangri-La, James Hilton, and pretty much this is how he describes it, this paradise where everything grows and people are healthy and happy and they die at a very old age if they die at all. Anyway, this kind of picture is easy, though. Everybody thinks that geographic photographers have tons of time on their hands, but that's not true, especially these days. We have to make every day count, every situation count, and I plan my trip according to what I need to shoot, and basically I don't have much time to waste at any time of the day, so I'm planning to be here at the right time to catch these pictures. The great thing about today's cameras is with the digital camera, often you don't need sun, and then you'll notice I am not a blue sky photographer. Occasionally the sky is blue, but for me I like that changing light. I like soft light. I'm not right middle of the day kind of person, and this is my favorite kind of light. It's in and out sunshine. So you get these moments where the sun comes down, bang, it hits the subject, you shoot it, and the next second it's gone. This is the mountain of Shangri-La. I have a picture over there. The other thing that's terrific these days is this DRO, Dynamic Range Optimizer. So you can get, with film, you would have to use a filter for this, because a camera with film would never be able to get the detail in the white as well as the detail in the foreground, and now you can do it with DRO, cameras that have DRO, because you can literally dial in the contrast. It's a big deal. These pictures without filters, without doctoring, without Photoshop, look good right on the camera. By the way, geographic photographers don't use Photoshop. We are photojournalists. Our job is to show the picture and the place the way it is. And anyway, that's the way it should be looking. Could we turn these lights down a little bit? I just wonder if that'll improve the color a bit. Is that possible? All right, so yeah, going over. Traveling in this part of the world is a series of going over passes. You go over the pass, you're into a town where people live. Most of these passes are up very high. You're looking down, say, 3,000 to 5,000 meters. And this is what you see on the other side. This is Tibet. This is traditional Tibet. Down called Bamba, you see this amazing architecture. I would say most of the pictures I do are point and shoot. You don't need anything fancy, you just see it, you go play. What's most important is your vision and the story you're trying to tell. is the architecture. These, look at these now because they're going to be very hard to see the longer the time goes by. These towns are changing, they're all looking Chinese, but for the moment they're still looking Tibetan, and this is all in Greater Tibet. It's outside TAR, Tibetan Autonomous Region. There's a big difference. Most of these are taken in Sichuan province. They have a great love for color, the Tibetans, and geometry. You see these incredibly intricate patterns on their houses. Again, we don't set up pictures. Everything is a found situation. I don't tell people to stand in windows. I don't tell them to move around. If I don't see it, I don't shoot it. Inside the houses, making butter. Tibetans drink a special type of tea. It's called yak butter tea. And the yak, which is like a cow, produces this very rich milk. They make it into butter. This goes into the tea. Chinese drama TV. You can see these people live well. These houses are big and solid. They live actually very well. And Tibetans are the most tea-drinking people in the world. They drink 30 to 40 cups a day. Now that's a lot of tea, but the reason for that, again, it's providing them vegetable nutrients. It's keeping them awake, of course. If you're a monk, you need to meditate, and also, it's just a nice, hospitable thing to do, to offer tea to a guest as they come in the door, and that happens in every Tibetan home. All these pictures also, you notice, are very natural. I need to spend time with my subjects. I can't go into a place and just start making frames. You have to spend the time. I stayed with this family a couple of days to get them familiar with me, and then I go to work, and you can take this kind of intimate picture where they're not looking at me, they're not following me as the strange photographer, strange person there with a camera. I become part of their lifestyle. More tea inside a hut. You get really obsessed. My subject is tea. Every time we're drinking tea, I'm shooting. And here we are in a Tibetan nomad hut. Again, contrast control, big deal with cameras these days. Having some sort of BRO. In the case of Sony, you can dial it in, and it's a great thing because you can't shoot this with film or a high contrast without doing a lot of Photoshop. And again, I'm living with these people, not a lot of time, but at least I need a day. So I try and stay with my subjects at whatever I'm shooting for 2 days at a time. Monasteries, okay, so the monks, of course, were the ones that brought in tea first. They were the first to get addicted to tea. Tibetans were the first foreigners to become addicted to tea because of these needs. And everywhere you go, of course, you see signs of religion. Tibetans live their religion 24 hours a day. I like to say photographers are paid to be lucky. We've all had that feeling, you're standing there and suddenly for some reason the rain stops, the bolt of double rainbow comes down on these stupas, and all you are sitting there awestruck and you just take the picture. Okay, so I'm inside a monastery. Now, another thing is that these pictures, my book really looks good compared to anything else that's out there on Tibet, because my advantage is most photographs of Tibet, especially recently, there are very little because there's so many restrictions on shooting there, and most of the books on Tibet have photographs taken with film many years ago. You can't shoot this with film. You can't shoot this because the only source of light is a candle. And now, of course, I'm in there with a high ISO A99 or whatever, banging away at ISO 12,000. Well, the most I could muster out of film at best was 400 to 800 ISO. And now you can just pump it up. I feel comfortable up to 12,000. prayer flags. Now the Tibetans are always praying for you because they write these prayers on this colorful cloth, and as the wind blows it, it's blowing prayers around the world. Of course, it makes great photographs, and everywhere you go, there's a sacred place, and there are more prayer flags to be photographed. And of course, you see scenes like that. I wish I could plan it to be there when they're actually planting all those amazing flags. And of course, wherever it's sacred, you know how sacred a place is according to how many of these prayer flags you can find there. And where you're going to find prayer flags in sacred places, you're going to find pilgrims. And it's wonderful to see the Tibetans in their element and how spiritual they are. And it's actually quite easy to photograph them because they don't care at all for whatever is worldly. They don't care that a target is standing in their face taking pictures. They're only concerned with worshiping God. And in this case, they do a very arduous form of prayer. It's called chaksal. And they basically take 2 steps, and they go like this, and slide out and do a push-up. Get up and do it again. Clockwise, it's called the Torah. They do it around all these sacred places. Prayer wheels inside of flag, same thing. Clockwise, everything. They spin these wheels and send these prayers everywhere. So they're always praying for you. Again, for me, I love just flat light. You still get this amazing color. Of course, the gold is incredible. And I think there's a vibrancy there that I don't see with film. I was one of the last people to do digital, get into digital. I only changed about 7 years ago. And I thought I would be that last guy shooting film where they'd say, what's that guy shooting film? Let's hire him for the job. Anyway, I didn't get to be that since I changed 7 years ago, but I'm glad I did. It just made my job a lot easier. Fill flash, use a lot of fill flash. I like you to have a sense of flash, but I don't want you to see it. So I shoot almost every picture that you've seen here with people, and they have a little bit of fill, usually negative 2 EV, and they just pop that little bit of strobe in there to make my picture. Prayer wheel down to the smallest size. Again, the Tibetans are great subjects in that they don't spend a lot of time worried about somebody putting a camera in their face. Which is why also people say, why do you come to Asia all the time? Well, I think not only is it the most photogenic place in the world, but also because the people here are pretty darn nice and allow you to take pictures. So you don't even have to get up. You can sit down and be a senior citizen and still spin your prayer wheel and send prayers to the Lord. Mani stone, same thing. This is a mantra, a prayer that's written on a stone, and they